Hi, welcome to Cubs in Culture for January 31st, 2018. I finally got around to rewatching Moonlight. I've seen the movie twice. On the second time, I liked it better than my first time. I still think it has sort of a major structural problem in the editing and direction, which robs the film of sort of its emotional involvement at the end. But other than that's mostly what the next section is going to be. So today we're going to be discussing. In this section, we'll be talking about the aspects of the film I really like. And just sort of a quick baseball update. We are 10 days away from pitchers and catchers reporting, and there's still, last time I checked, 130 free agents to be signed. So it's probably going to be a very busy week, hopefully. Hopefully, eventually the floodgates have to open. Anyway, so the movie Moonlight is a coming-of-age story, specifically around a young black man who's trying to get comfortable in his own skin in terms of sort of gender expectations and role. Specifically, he's gender nonconforming in terms. He doesn't identify as gay, but it sort of has a love. It's not really a love story. Yeah, I guess love story's fine. Between men, in it, him and this, the main character who's, has several names, but, Chiron is sort of, his given name, so it's probably the name I'll use. And Kevin, who's the other character that sort of goes, through, and now it's told in three distinct, segments because this movie's about, Chiron trying to identify, in trying to come up with a sort of stable identity, and specifically it's about how sort of the tragedy of the movie is how this sort of sweet, sensitive kid, because of just kind of being gay, is by the boxcars of toxic masculinity, forced to become he has to force to use the word used in the film has to become hard, meaning traditionally masculine, tough, emotionally repressive, etc. Again, I really do like this movie. So let me just do it by act. The first act is pretty good. It concerns when he's a little kid, like 9-ish, I guess. And he befriends, I kind of gets this sort of father figure played by Ali. I'm not going to try to say the man's first name because I'll just butcher it. Who Ali's performance is sort of a naturalistic, and he ends up being something of a father figure. But then, and there's this really sort of touching scene. It's actually the first act climax of Ali. Blue is the character's name, or at least one of his names. Explaining to Chiron what the word faggot means, and that's sort of touching. And I really like how Blue isn't just this sort of sympathetic sort of father figure. In that Chiron's mother is has a drug addiction problem, and Blue is her dealer, and not directly, but eventually. Down the line, he's the one providing Chiron's mother with drugs. So there's that sort of complicated emotion about how we should feel about him. In any case, Ali is very, very good in the film. Sort of naturalistic and striking, and he doesn't actually have that many scenes, but he's good enough that he sort of hangs over like a true father figure for Chiron for the rest of the movie. And then the second act, it jumps, I don't know, 8 years, 10 years, when, about 16, 17, and it centers around, Chiron being bullied, and specifically, him, sort of his sexual awakening, and there's this absolutely, and this is I think these two scenes back to back are sort of the main, part of the movie, or the main interest in the movie, is it's not really a sex scene, but there's this intimate scene between him and this other guy named Kevin, and it's so a lot of times sexual intimacy is very badly portrayed in films. It's very, very false, or it's very inauthentic, and the scene is gloriously awkward, and it feels very true to life. And in any case, it's a very critical moment in the character's journey. And I really like how this scene is put together, because there's sort of an easy chemistry with the actors, and it's not just like, it's not really, the eroticism or the sexuality comes out of emotional intimacy, which you don't often get, and you rarely get with same sex or same gender sexuality. In any case, that's immediately contrasted because, again, the character's in high school, and he Kevin ends up being basically bullied into physically attacking Chiron. And so that's a great complexity of, like, this guy who, in essence, he lost his virginity with, Chiron lost his virginity with, also being sort of the main sort of plot villain, antagonist at this moment. And though, of course, Kevin's also sort of a victim, because he's sort of been bought in by the boxcars of toxic masculinity. He has to appear tough for the other guys, or he himself become the bullying victim. And that at least has some complexity to it. So the first and second act of the film are, at least insofar as they're the first and second act are concerned, are emotionally involving, and the screenplay is strong. And it's really in the third act that I feel that this film's sort of structural problems happen. But let me, before I get into that, so one of the things this movie is doing is talking about the way in which identity is formed, the way in which sort of the way in which our identities across time aren't stable, where they're both sort of not stable and unstable. And so I kind of understand why the jumps in time happen intellectually. And the three actors who play the main character, Little, Chiron, and Black, they all do a good job, and they seem to be the same person, but at the same time, you don't, and you see the character arc, but at the same time, I feel like the film has been sort of robbed of narrative momentum and emotional involvement by going into the two jumps in the story, that the first act, second act, and third act are really distinct segments. And so at the end, when Chiron and Kevin are together, and then it cuts to Little on the beach in Moonlight, it's supposed to be like this cathartic moment of, oh no, this poor little kid has been denied for so long, and he's had to be turned into this really tough, kind of emotionally stunted, interpersonally damaged person because of the boxcars of toxic masculinity. But it doesn't feel like that's happened. I grasp that intellectually, that that's what the film is saying. But I don't feel it. Like, it's not like there's not an emotional catharsis here. It's just sort of intellectually grasping it. Now, some of this might be because it's not my story. Not being black. So maybe I do sort of relate to the bullying stuff in it, around like gender expression, but maybe that's part of it. So I'm going to talk in the next section more specifically about why I think how these jumps are shot and edited together, why I think it's why the narrative momentum is lost in this film. And where each act kind of resets our emotional involvement, so it doesn't actually build correctly. Which, even though each act's climax has sort of an emotional payoff or complexity or involving, it's not nearly as powerful as it could have been. And so in the end, the movie feels sort of curiously emotionally inert to me, or emotionally distant. So let me pause there. Okay, see you in a bit.